Good evening, Dr. Vidya Bandutwala. It's my pleasure to introduce to our viewers Dr. Vidya Bandutwala. She's a gynecologist with Nanavati Max, Mumbai. And today she would be talking with us mainly about the relationship between vulvodynia and interstitial cystitis. As we all know that many IC patients, they have vulvodynia as a comorbidity. And the thing is, IC is itself a very a disease which is not known about. Most people don't know about it. And vulvodynia is also another disease that is not discussed in detail. At least many people are not aware of it. So today we would be talking about it. So doctor, thank you very much for giving your time. So my first question is, what is vulvodynia and what are the chances of IC patients getting vulvodynia?
Well, thank you so much, Balika. It's nice to interact. And this is more like an awareness program that you are, doing. So it's a big thing. Women today really want to know what is vulvodynia because not many women really know about this kind of condition in women. So vulvodynia as such means any pain in the vaginal area, down below. That is the way patients usually come to us, that they find the area quite painful, very, typically describing it as burning, stinging, raw, soreness is what they describe. And they are really not able to elicit what it is. So vulvodynia means any kind of pain in the vulval region. First and foremost, vulva is the outer covering of the area below. And it comprises of the clitoris, which is a hood-like thing between the two lips that we see from the outer side. That is the labia majora and the labia minora. Now we need to know that this vulval region actually is covering the urethra, which is on the upper aspect, and the vaginal opening, which is all together in the vestibular area. So we need to know that vulvodynia, which in the Latin was vulva, which means the covering, and odynia means the pain. So any pain related to this outer covering is called vulvodynia. And it is any pain that continues for more than 3 months is when we label the patient as vulvodynia. Okay, most often this condition is seen overlapping with other condition. That's the reason it is always ignored, or probably the patient does not come with that condition directly to us. And maybe after probing a little more, do they actually speak about this condition? So yes, as you said, that about good 10 to 15% of these patients are seen in our OPD and all that. And yes, ICBPS is one of the condition which has an overlapping symptoms very similar to vulvodynia. I would say that there are other conditions that are irritable bowel syndrome. A lot of patients who have had any kind of surgery, we call that post-traumatic stress disorder. Very commonly, any surgery in the vaginal area, somehow they have a sensitizing effect on the nerve, and that could also lead to a vulvodynia. So as you said, yes, very commonly seen with ICBPS, but also seen in other conditions which I have already mentioned.
So can a tight pelvic floor cause vulvodynia?
So when you tell me about tight pelvic floor, okay, it probably could be secondary to the vulvodynia, or vulvodynia could be secondary to a tight pelvic floor. Both are, you could say interrelated to each other. Which is the primary cause is very difficult to, distinguish between the two. Now, if I give you an example, any patient who is a vulvodynia is a very, very sensitive kind of a tissue. So she just needs a trigger. Now, there are two types of vulvodynia. We have to realize that one is a provoked vulvodynia and one is an unprovoked. That means all the time she just has a continuous pain. Whereas a provoked one is the minute you touch that area, that triggers the whole cycle of pain. Okay. And pelvic floor forms a part of the vagina. We have to realize that our lower perineum, right from the upper part, from the vulva going down to the anal, is taken care by the muscles. It forms a musculature, and these are the apertures that are seen. One is the urethral opening, then the vaginal opening, and the anal opening. They are all surrounded by these muscles. That is the levator ani. Okay, it forms when it is surrounding the vagina, it is called the pubovaginalis. Then the urethral part of it. So these are all like a hammock right up to the tailbone. Now, any dysfunction, and we also need to know that they have a common nerve that supplies all three of them. So any part gets infected or any other condition, it can refer the pain to the vulval region. So pelvic dysfunction, pelvic floor specifically, any pelvic floor or any muscle spasm can give this kind of pain. So very clearly, the muscles go into spasm, and this can elicit a vulvodynial effect. That means a pain in the region. Now, they both are interrelated, very difficult to distinguish. It's only the symptoms, and probably when you examine the patient or probe back. Like, for example, there was this patient who probably in her childhood had a fall, a fall where she had a tailbone injury, which she's forgotten. And in her later part, how that, sexual intercourse triggered the whole episode of pain. So something like that, an injury to any muscle can also trigger the whole cycle. So as I said, that it's very, very difficult to distinguish. It's so interrelated that only through a lot of examination, and we really don't have the test for vulvodynia. There is no, I wouldn't call that there is a Q-tip test where we try to elicit the provoked vulvodynia, but there is no other laboratory investigation that we can pinpoint. So it's all through the history and speaking to the patient that we get to the point of it.
So is there like some method of elimination that you follow the way you do for IC, that to diagnose?
Yeah, definitely. The elimination is always the diagnosis that we look for IC as well as this. Vulvodynia has a very typical way of eliciting. One is whenever a patient comes with any kind of vulval pain, we definitely need to look at the skin around the vulva. We have to see if there is any kind of skin disorders or any rashes or anything that could also contribute to this. We need to also look at the vagina to see that there is no vaginal infection that is triggering the pain. Also, urinary infection can trigger. So once we know that these things are not there, we do a Q-tip test. Now, Q-tip test is nothing but a cotton wool that is on a stick, and you kind of, through the location, you map it out. You actually map the whole trigger point. So as soon as you touch on those points, the patient usually winces. Typically, she withdraws herself into a cocoon kind of a thing. And that is very typical of vulvodynia. So even if a patient has an ICBPS, okay, the minute she elicits this, we know that she also has a vulvodynia. And with the history is very typical. These patients usually have sexual dysfunction. They have a lot of inhibition when it comes to sexual intimacy. So the history elicits a lot. Along with history, when you do the Q-tip test or you speak to her, do you realize that she also has vulvodynia along with ICBPS?
I'm just curious, is there, when you say about history, is there also any history of sexual abuse involved in your patients or some kind of sexual trauma?
I would say definitely yes. It has contributed a lot. Well, sexual abuse as a childhood abuse is taken in a very different way. As a child, the trauma is taken very deeply. They grow up with that trauma. They start catastrophing, the whole episode again and again. And what is the sexual part that they related? It is always to the vulval part. So that part becomes sensitized. So they kind of emotionally, have a response to that part. So yes, definitely, any kind of sexual abuse, may it be a childhood abuse, or even currently, when the patient is in her adulthood also, any kind of abuse can be related to this kind of episode. So as you put vulvodynia, the diagnosis of stress is always to be brought into the picture, especially the sexual abuse part of it.
Yeah, but I have observed that patients are not always comfortable talking about their history of sexual abuse or of marital rape or those things.
Yeah.
So,
I
how do you deal with it as a doctor?
Right. So, Bhalika, this is a very important point you've actually brought in. Not all are, not all are very comfortable talking about their sexual part. So, as a doctor, it's very important, especially when anybody is in this kind of painful episode. They are very isolated. They don't like to talk. So, it is our duty, to bring the confidence into them. You have to tell them that we will be able to treat you if only you can speak to us, and whatever we speak will be within this four walls. That confidence, if you can build up, show them that empathy, try to bring it out through them, becomes very difficult. Sometimes you have to lead them, you have to ask them leading questions, like you could go back to their childhood, speak about their childhood. You don't need to start with the abuse. You could just say, how was your childhood? Did you have, were you in a nuclear family? Were you in a joint family? How was your family? Were they very supportive? All these kind of things can help them to feel better. And when they feel better, they usually open up. Ultimately they want to feel good, they want to be pain free, so they do let us know, but it is never initial. It is only after probing, and these kind of sessions take a long time. So sometimes if we are truly busy in our OPD, I think we can call them back and speak to them.
Do you also feel like involving a therapist, psychotherapist in this kind of sessions,
It
or
depends.
refer them?
Okay. Yeah, Balka, it depends. If the patient is really looking very disturbed, yes, of course, because a counselor will definitely know the ways and the tips and the tricks of, getting over with overcoming these problems, coping techniques. All these strategies are very well given by them. So, as a gynecologist with our kind of practice, sometimes it's very difficult to get to that level. So, yes, we can team up with a counselor, and a psychotherapist works wonders. With a person who's had a background of all these abuse and domestic violence and all, they're emotionally very down. So they need to boost up, and that also helps in the treatment. When you look at a holistic approach, you're not just looking at the pharmacotherapy part of it, but you're also looking at the holistic part of it.
So, so would you also recommend cognitive behavior therapy kind of things for these patients?
Yeah. So when you talk about cognitive behavior therapy, it's about, like, there are personalities. Okay, certain personalities like to make a small issue a big thing. They're not able to handle even the slightest of what you call them, failure in their life. Anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, they just can't take it. Now these kind of personalities need to be taught to overcome them. A fearful kind of a person, so there are modules where you tell them to face the fear, how to face the fear, and let the individual know how it is to face the fear and overcome it. So yes, a mindful way of thinking about the whole fact. The very fact is, you need to educate the patient about what is vulvodynia. If you don't educate the patient, ignorance can be blissful, but at times it can be worse. So if you kind of speak to them, let them know what this condition, and also bring it out that this condition needs their own support. you know Self-care therapy is what we need to bring it out, and only then, hand in hand, can we help them out. So cognitive behavioral therapy helps to change they modify the lifestyle of the patient. If a patient is very, very kind of aggressive or very depressive kind of a patient, they try and give them tips of how to overcome them, change their mindset. So all that works in the favor, you know. So definitely, yes, CBT, psychotherapy, they all go hand in hand.
Ideally, what is the prognosis for vulvodynia?
If you look at it, most of the women do very well with just simple tricks of how to manage. One is, as I told you, they are very sensitive in that vulval tissue, and it could be for any reason. It could be a trauma. It could be a bad, birth, after birth effect. Most of the women postpartum, if they've had a very bad tear, you know, post instrumental delivery, they'll always have that phobia, and that phobia will turn into an emotional response to that. So these kind of patients, yes, the prognosis is good if you take them in the right path. There are a few of them who probably will end up in certain, the tissue is so sensitive that sometimes you need to just surgically remove those tissues, which trigger the pain cycle. So yes, 80% definitely will do well, but yes, it takes a long time. Again, as I said, it depends on patient to patient, individual. Every patient individual needs to be tailor made. One size fits all is not the rule. The thumb rule for this is very different. You have to look at the patient, how her personality is, how she's doing. That depends, and that is how we go forward.
Well, I'm just going back to the previous point that when you say trauma to the vulval region, so miscarriages and those kind of things can also cause vulvodynia or can trigger vulvodynia?
Very unlikely, but not so many cases have been seen with patients who've had miscarriages where vulval this. But any trauma, in the sense, when you say most of them post delivery have had these issues, or anybody who's had a vaginal surgery in the form of a hysterectomy, so again, you have to know that any kind of surgery causes changes in the musculature of the pelvis. Now, if there is scarring, what happens is that muscle can shorten up, and that can go into a spasm. Again, as I said, that nerves are supplying to the skin, to the bones, to the muscles. So all this can interconnect each other. So if there is pain in one part, it can trigger the pain to another part. So it's like a vicious cycle. So if you know that there is a spasm, there are mechanisms, there are massages that can be given, there are relaxation techniques that we can teach the patient. All this can contribute to their well-being, definitely.
Can a pelvic floor therapy help in vulvodynia?
100%, yes. So when I look at a patient who comes with vulvodynia, again, if there is a definite pelvic floor hypersensitivity, where we look at tight pelvic floor, one is you need to know what kind of a background she is. So again, going back to her history, you need to find out what clothing she wears. Some women like wearing tight clothings and all. Now you have to tell them that you have to wear loose clothing, because this tight clothing can also be a trigger. Then women who work on desk, they need to sit for long hours, and that can also trigger. Then women who are cyclists, who go on, these days with all kind of cyclothon and all. Now these are again women who could be prone to changes in their vulval sensitivity. Women who are on horse riding and certain, gymnastics and all that kind. Anything that can trigger, we have to change their lifestyle. We have to probably tell them, you don't need to give up, but at this moment, till we make, we change things for you, you will have to give up on your passion for a while. And then physical therapy helps in relaxing. So there are massages that help to lengthen the spasm, the spasmodic muscle. It helps to relax that muscle, and it helps to lengthen that muscle. And in that way, it relaxes that muscle, and it helps to alleviate the pain. So physical therapists do a wonderful job in these aspects. There are biofeedback therapies which also help in relaxing the muscles. So overall, the whole idea here is the contracture of the musculature is taken care, and they are taught the relaxation techniques, or they are made to do it in the presence of the therapist.
Can nerve block also help with vulvodynia?
Yes. So it is never the first line of treatment. As I said, we always go to the very simple line of conservative management, where we speak to the patient. We ask her to change her lifestyle. If she has a very stressful life, we ask her to, kind of take a short break and change some things in her life. Certain habits, certain food habits also can trigger, as you said, that ICBPS. Now, these kind of patients have both, IC and the vulvodynia. So you need to treat even IC at the same time. So definitely all that approach is given. Changing in her habits, changing in her way of thinking, all can contribute. Then, of course, the local therapy. Now, in vulvodynia, we also ask them to use anesthetic gels, that can also help them. But if all these do not help them, then the third line of therapy is nerve blocks. And we have very good pain management doctors these days. So they do a wonderful, so they inject the anesthetic the anesthetic product, and that gives a lot of relaxation, and can be given time to time, but depending on the patient.
Doctor, you were talking about diet. So we all know about IC diet, but what would be IC vulvodynia diet? Is
It's
it
very
something
similar.
more specific or?
No, there is really no specific diet for vulvodynia. If you have a patient who has IC, then you need to work on the IC diet, which means no chocolates, no spicy food, no tangy food, nothing with aerated beverages, alcohol. All these are trigger factors. And there is a website. I mean, the Global Indian Interstitial Cystitis Society has a diet chart that is given. I think you can just go through that, and that's good enough.
Is estrogen a good treatment for vulvodynia?
Not in the younger patients, because they already have the estrogen. Probably a woman who's in the menopausal age group, where we see a lot of vaginal atropic changes, then probably estrogen will definitely contribute. We actually look at them, and it won't come as vulvodynia. Then it comes as a genitourinary, symptoms, where they do have urinary symptoms, but they also have a lot of atropic changes, dry vagina. It's a very typical looking skin around the vagina. So estrogen may not be the first line of treatment when it comes to vulvodynia, but as I said, in the later age group, where you look at a menopausal age group, yes, it can.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is vulvodynia more common among menopausal women, or it can take place in any age group?
I wouldn't say vulvodynia is common in the menopausal age group. I think it is more common in the younger age group, more in the reproductive age group, or even younger than that. Adolescents going now. You just an example that I would come. I had a couple who were lawyers by profession, and she had this. They were married for almost 6 months, not able to consummate. The reason behind that was, when I probed, and they didn't come with that. It was just through probing that, what is your plan for family, and that's when she came out with this. So as you said, that women are not really very comfortable bringing up this topic. So when I just asked her, and she brought it out, and really that shocked me, that, even literate women, a professionally independent woman, did not speak to me in the first stance. And only through probing did I realize that she had some bedroom stories that were dark. So she told me, when I probed into, she said that I'm so scared, so phobic. And the reason behind that, when I probed it, was her friend. Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me now? You're muted, I think, Balika. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Sorry. So as a child, growing up, she had a friend who spoke about sexual intimacy in a very wrong way. I mean, you are in your adolescence age group and somebody speaks to you all wrong concepts about sexual intimacy. So that was so deeply grilled into her that when she got married, it kind of came out. So the phobia, and she typically elicited the vulvodynial effect. So I'm just saying that personality wise also, the impact is very deep in these women, and they're actually diagnosed in the later part of life. So when you say about childhood abuse, maybe that time things may not be elicited, but it is later part that things are picked up. A diagnosis of vulvodynia can be picked up.
I think in India as a society, we have a lot of innovations when it comes to talking about sex. So I think maybe introducing sexual dialogues in schools would help, but that is a long way to go. Doctor,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
definitely. Yeah, I can hear you, Balika. Uh, when you tell me about this, yes, women are very uncomfortable when it comes to their personal life. They could talk about somebody else, but when it comes to their personal life and their stories, they always take a back seat. Yes, to be open about sexual intimacy is very important because everybody has different stories. And it's only we as doctors can probably break that taboo from this. So most of the sex education are given by doctors like us. I've had one or two such sessions. My colleagues have done that. So a lot of changes have come. Schools also have realized that sex education is a must, and with a lot of input from the internet, I think kids are also getting a lot of information. So I wouldn't say today women are really thinking too much. They do speak up, but there are a few handful where we really need to probe deeper.
Yes, I think it is also a generational thing because our generation, when we were growing up, it was a taboo. But now things are getting better. So I'm sure people would be more comfortable in coming days to talk about these things. So, Doctor, more or less, you have covered what is vulvodynia. So, I would get to some of the questions that the patients have directly asked you.
Great. Yeah.
So, I think the ones you have already covered, I'm not asking them. So, this like, is vulvodynia pain related to nerves? Can nerve block heal the pain? I think you have already covered this
It
point.
is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so one question is how to rule out infections, candida or yeast?
Okay. Uh, so when you have a candidial or yeast, we call it the fungal infection. Candida albicans is the organism that the fungal part. So when you look at the vagina, you have a very typical discharge, and it's a curdy white discharge with the patient comes with the history and complain of, and typically she will have a lot of itching, and itching that is terrible. So when you look at the vulva, you can actually see the whole of vulva turn red, erythematic, a red picture because of the itching that she has undergone. And when you go into the vagina and you open up, you can see a lot of curdy white discharge, and it is the candidial infection. So it is one and the same when we talk about yeast. It is a fungal infection that a woman has. And if you have an infection, definitely you will have a lot of vulval pain.
The other question is gabapentin gives relief from vulvar pain, but how long can we take gabapentin? What are the ill effects of long term intake of gabapentin?
Now, these are all neuromodulators. Okay, we don't start with these kind of treatment immediately, but if a patient is not getting any relief, then we do start them. We start them on a low dose, maybe about 75 milligram, more so in the bedtime, and they give a lot of sedative effects. So we do speak to our patients and tell them that you may feel a little drowsy, so be careful. Do not drive because that can cause some kind of accident if you don't know about it. And yes, you can give this treatment for a long time. But again, I said, this is not the treatment. It always goes hand in hand with the other line of treatment where you do a lot of counseling, you do a lot of holistic approach in the sign of modifying the lifestyle of the patient, her habits, everything. So there is no one therapy that works. There will be a multi therapy going at one time that can give the relief to a patient. So gabapentin has given good relief, but along with other line of therapy, as Balika very she picked up and said that counseling, yes, at the same time, even associating with a psychotherapist can give a good counseling and gabapentin all. Now these are given for short time, they're not given for lifelong. Now this is to change the outlook of the patient, let her realize that the vulva can react to the touch. So we do these kind of therapies in sessions. So it takes about good 3 months plus, a little longer in some patients. So we allow the patient to see the change in the sensitization of the vulval tissue. So we desensitize it. The minute she is sensitized, we try to do the same thing repetitively so that she knows that this is not anything to do with pain. And then, she overcomes it slowly. So, yeah.
A lot of questions on diet. So
I would only answer it in one thing is the diet has to be the IC diet. There's no particular vulvodyneal diet. Whoever wants the IC diet should go on the website and look at it.
just one question I would like you to answer, that is, do nightshade vegetables, dairy, soy, gluten, and oxalate-rich food item worsen vulvodynia?
I don't think gluten has a role in the vulvodyneal part of it. So I pointed out that it has to be a very spicy food can trigger. A lot of preservative food can trigger any food allergy. So food allergy can be towards, if you say irritable bowel, even a milk product can be irritable, right? So it is individual. Some individual could have only allergic to a certain diet, whereas the other individual may not have. So it is very difficult to pinpoint individually who is allergic to what. So if gluten is for the irritable bowel, yes, and you have an overlapping vulvodynia, I would treat it as an allergen.
Okay, so here is a question. Panties and tight jeans flare up my vulvodynia. So what to do? So I think you have covered
Absolutely.
this.
I did cover it, but whoever has asked it is truly going through that. Yes, so you must give away this for the time being till you feel that your vulvodyneal effect is wearing out, and then probably, but it can always trigger. So tight panties and tights, jeans, jeggings, all these are a no for the time that she's undergoing the treatment.
Not only
Else we,
yes, doctor.
else we would never know, no, if she doesn't give away and change her lifestyle, it's very difficult to treat these kind of patients.
And not only vulvodynia, I think even for icy tight jeans and jeggings, they flare up.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this is a very important question, I think. I have vulvodynia and it causes pain during sexual intercourse. How to go ahead with having relations?
Okay, so she truly needs to meet the right person. Okay, because there is no the treatment. It depends on what we see. One is we'll rule out that she is having any existing vulval infection or anything, or a bladder issue. Second is any overlapping other symptom condition, as we ICBPS or irritable bowel syndrome, if she's had any kind of trauma in her past which is now coming out. So all these have to be ruled out. So it's very difficult to speak to a person with this. She will need to be examined thoroughly. History is very important, and that's when we can give her a line of treatment.
I am pregnant. Can a natural delivery worsen my vulvodynia?
It again depends. If you are a patient of vulvodynia and you have a phobia. Tocophobia is what we call it. Any phobia related to childbirth, where patient is very fearful, is called tocophobia. And again, for these kind of patients, counseling is a must, because if we don't counsel her and she has a bad kind of a delivery where she's traumatized, she can go into a very bad depressive postpartum depression. So very important is, if this patient is not wanting to have a normal delivery, I think you should not press upon it, but you have to let her know the good points of having a normal delivery over the C-section. Maybe then she can make a choice for herself, and every individual has the right to decide what mode of delivery she would like to go. But informed consent is what we believe, that she should be informed about the pros and the cons of the same.
But is it true that actually vulvodynia can increase after a normal delivery, or it's just a myth? Like,
no, if she's had a normal delivery where she's not traumatized and it has gone, like a picture perfect, she would not have any trauma. Because if a woman has a childbirth and she has her baby in her arms, believe me, they forget all the trauma that they've gone through. Okay. But if she's had a traumatic, like, where she's had a prolonged labor and she needed to have a instrumental delivery, or she had a very bad tear which has gone up to the back passage, and she needed to undergo and under anesthesia the suturing part of it, then yes, it is traumatic and it could probably worsen her. So picking up these, identifying these women is very important, and postpartum counseling is the answer to them. But if you tell me beforehand she's already scared and nervous, then as I said, that you need to counsel her. You need to counsel her.
the main thing is there is nothing to be scared of, actually.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
More of a mind.
In fact, I would say, pregnancy is a time when most of the women have remissions.
Yes,
Most
yes.
of the trigger points are, silent at that point. Even ICBPS, there's a remission during pregnancy, and that is the best part of it.
Absolutely. Another question is, I am unable to use tampons or sanitary napkins due to my vulvar pain. What to do?
Very nice question. I would say that this should have been one of my, I'm sorry, I didn't cover that part of it. But actually, vulvodynia are picked up with young people when they first start the use of tampon. So tampon could be the trigger for the vulvodynia. And that is when the woman will realize that there is something really wrong. I get a lot of spasm when I try to insert the tampon, or post insertion of the tampon, my pain triggers. Okay, so it's not the tampon that causes the pain, but it is probably the change in the pelvic musculature, the response of her inserting, or the trigger points getting triggered with her insertion is what we need to identify, and then of course manage the whole thing.
Yes, absolutely. I think I would like to share my personal experience here, because I first figured out that I have something wrong when I first used tampon.
Right.
I had gone abroad and I couldn't get sanitary napkins there, so I used tampons. I don't know if I was more scared because I was using it for the first time, or it actually triggered, but I had a horrible flare after that.
Right.
I also noticed that I cannot tolerate any kind of fragrant sanitary napkins. So,
Okay. No, you're right. So all these fragrance, perfumes, this vaginal douche, they all could be allergic factor. So when you talk about allergy of food, you also talk about allergies with regard to, even detergents. There are, women who wash their panties with certain detergents that are really strong, could also trigger vulval pain and vulvodynia. So you're coming to that part, where we could say that these are also allergies.
yes, I read somewhere in the internet, I think, that even panty seams that are inside, that can also trigger vulvodynia. Is it true? So they always ask us to wear it, reverse. seams should be outside, the stitches.
Not necessarily. I wouldn't go with that. I would still say that use a cotton panty rather for those people who are more sensitive in the vulval area. Loose, not really very tight fitting uh, panties would be what we would recommend. And I don't think the sim has any major role. If your panty is tight, the sim naturally will get more tighter, and that could evoke the response. So very important is, we have to realize that in vulvodynia, it is the sensitivity that we are looking at. If your skin is very sensitive, then anything can trigger it. Even an emotional stress can trigger it. So why only, blame the panty?
Yes. Is okay, this one we covered. Is lidocaine gel good to control vulvar pain?
Yes, if you have a very bad lidocaine is an anesthetic gel which can be used, and we do recommend the patient to use, especially when they want to have a sexual intimacy and they are not at all comfortable. Then we ask them to use the gel at least half an hour before, so that it takes away the pain part of it, and does not come in between the pleasure. And this is also the way of overcoming. When you know that you don't have pain, you are in a better frame of mind.
Uh, Exercising increases my symptoms. How to manage?
Yes, exercise depends on what kind of exercise. As I said, if you are cycling, or you have this gymnast where you have to, have put pressure on the vulval area, that definitely can trigger. Again, what kind of clothing you wear. Now, if you are wearing your tight suits for your exercise, then of course that again becomes a trigger. So you need to go to a milder form of exercise where there is no pressure on the vulval area. Needless to say, that is the only reason why you could get pain. But otherwise, if you go walking and you do, other kind of exercise, I don't think it should trigger.
I have a desk job and long-term sitting increases my vulvodynia pain. How to
Right.
keep working with this condition?
Okay. So we I think we spoke about it. A desk job where you have to sit for long hours,
Yes,
again
we
putting a lot
spoke,
of
but
pressure.
I think
Yeah.
she
So
just
we
wants
we,
to
we
know some
no,
remedy.
I know. I was just coming to that. So you can ask her to use a donut kind of a, a pillow, a soft pillow, which can help her take away the pressure of her pelvic to the seat. And that could be one part. But again, as I said, we have to realize that these all treatment of vulvodynia just doesn't mean, you change the sitting arrangement. It has to go hand in hand with the therapy that we spoke. And we have to realize that even after the patient is fully treated, there is never a fully treated patient could have flares on and off. Only thing is the flare may not last for long because she knows her ways out now. When you educate the patient on how to help her remissions, she's able to do that on her own with the treatment and the counseling that we give her. And
So,
and Balika, one more thing I would like all my ladies who have zoomed in with us, that you have to learn to self help yourself. And there are a lot of ways to do that. One is the relaxation, changing your mindset is very, very important. Second is there are support groups, on the net. There are a lot of women who have the same condition. Speak to them, get their story out, find out what are the ways that they did to alleviate their pain. All that can help. So you must communicate. It's very, very important. Unless you don't communicate, you will not get any kind of help, because this condition of vulvodynia cannot be seen. It is only felt. And unless the sufferer does not come out of it, it's difficult even as a doctor for me to diagnose it. So we have to tell our patients that please speak up, come out of your shell, and be very open about it.
yes, with this purpose only we founded our support group where we encourage patients to talk.
Great.
And the best
Great.
thing is that, patients are often not very comfortable speaking with others, but when they know that they are speaking to a fellow patient, they are more open. They talk a
Absolutely.
lot. So I
Right.
think that way we are trying to help. But again, you were talking about internet, but I just want to ask this, that often, internet, it gives you good information, but it often also becomes misleading.
Oh, yeah.
So because
It's always, Balika, I
yeah,
won't
because
say
I've seen
always
many
misleading.
patients, they are just doing a lot of wrong thing only because they read something
So,
on the net.
so Balika, as I said, that if you are not an expert in the field, do not take it to the value. You need to always speak to the right people and be sure of what you read, and then do the needful. If you have, if you have no knowledge about it, don't blindly follow it. Right? That's the reason. Don't be a blind follower on the net. Make sure you meet the right person, speak to them. Oh, yes, that I googled and I found out this. How could that help me? So the answer is very clear. Don't be your own doctor. We are here to help you. Take our help.
Yes, absolutely. That should be the take-home message, that don't be
Message.
your own
Absolutely.
doctor. So
Yeah.
we have more or less covered all the questions. So finally, I would just like you to give some tips, tricks, some management techniques for vulvodynia patients in the day. How can
Okay.
they
Yeah.
manage their day-to-day life?
So, vulvodynia is a condition where pain is the biggest bothersome to all the women, and they all want the pain to be gone. Very important, you have to first find out what is your trigger factor, from your clothing to your job profile to your emotional stress to your background of any childhood abuse or current abuse. All these triggers need to be taken care, and who else better than yourself can do that? You can judge yourself. As I always say, be your own advocate when it comes to doing these things. Take timely help, bring it out. Don't wait for it to become a very chronic episode where things are beyond our reach. If diagnosed early, treatment can be the best management for you. Early diagnosis, early treatment, the suffering becomes very less. So speak open. If you do not know the right person, it's always better to communicate with your colleagues and know who's the right person to go to. Google, there are enough information on that. Again, as I said, don't be a blind person. If you are not sure of certain things, speak. Try and meet the right doctor who takes care of these conditions. Vulvodynia has been even given very nicely over the internet of certain conditions. And I think we can, as I said, clothing and everything, certain thing, and the management with physical therapists, relaxation techniques. Again, the therapist can teach you techniques which you can do it at home. So you need not keep traveling, because that is also a stress. Never make your treatment a stress. So all these can be taken, and if you do it rightly and know your realistic goals, that this condition will take time to wear off or wean off. It may probably never go completely, but you can take care of the remissions and avoid the flares. Then I think that is the answer to your treatment.
Thank you so much, doctor. It was really nice talking to you. It was very insightful and helpful. Um, Thank you once again. Thank you for giving your
I
time.
hope, Balika, I have done justice to what you expected out of me. And
Yes, yes. No,
uh,
no, it was
and
really very good, because vulvodynia is something that is not talked about as much. We now still have some awareness about IC, but vulvodynia is still
yeah.
something
Also,
not talked
Balika, one more thing is we also need to know that most patients who have vulvodynia, they also have a coexisting vaginismus. Now, vaginismus is nothing but an involuntary muscular spasm when they are sexually intimidated. Again, this is a condition which can be isolated or it can coexist with a vulvodynia. Most of these patients may not come to you directly, but they do have sexual dysfunction, they have interrelation problems. Again, only by probing, giving them leading questions, we can get them. So do not ignore vaginismus also.
Yes, good. I was actually thinking about this. Very good, you covered on your own. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yeah, most
Hope
pleasure.
we would interact again.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Thank you so much. It was nice having this conversation. I felt really good. I was happy to get some questions which, are important for me to talk to my patients also. So this kind of helps me also. Thank you so much. Yeah.